Okay, so you know how we rely on all these digital things, right? Like all our apps, AI, everything like that.
Yeah.
And underneath it all, there is this really intricate world of semiconductors.
Uh-huh.
And for so long, it's been these like big dominant players. You know the names,
Yeah.
ARM, Intel, NVIDIA. But there's this kind of fascinating shift that's been happening.
Interesting.
This open source alternative is gaining some real traction, and it's called RISC-V.
Yeah, RISC-V. And just to be clear for everyone, it's pronounced RISC-V.
RISC-V, right. Not just some side project anymore, though. This is becoming a real thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's an open standard instruction set architecture.
Okay, break that down for me.
So imagine like the core language, the
Yeah.
fundamental way that software actually talks to the processor, the brain of the computer.
Okay.
And it's all based on this really streamlined approach.
Okay.
It's called reduced instruction set computer design. And the key here is it's completely free.
Okay.
No single company owns it.
Free in the sense of like licensing fees or free in the sense of...
Both, actually.
Mm.
So you can use it without paying any licensing fees, which is huge for developers.
Yeah.
And the design itself is open. Anyone can look at it, build upon it, modify it.
Yeah.
It's really about collaboration.
Wow. Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into this whole rise of RISC-V,
Definitely.
particularly focusing on China's role in this whole movement.
Yeah, they're really becoming a major player in the RISC-V world.
And it'll be interesting to see what this means for the future of chip technology, right?
Absolutely.
And like how it shifts the whole global power dynamic.
Yeah, those are some big questions we're grappling with.
Yeah. Our main source for this deep dive today is a really insightful article from Asia Times.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It goes really in depth on China's strategic push for RISC-V.
Exactly. And what really struck me from that piece was just the sheer scale and coordination of China's effort. Like, they're not messing around. The article mentions these new government guidelines, and they're apparently promoting this nationwide use of RISC-V integrated circuit design standards.
That's a big deal. We're not talking about a couple of companies dabbling in this.
Right.
This is a full-on, top-down initiative from the government.
Right. And it's not just like one branch of the government either.
Oh, no.
This is involving some heavy hitters.
Yeah, the Cyberspace Administration, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the Ministry of Science and Technology.
It's even the National Intellectual Property Administration, right?
Exactly. That's a serious level of cross-governmental support. It shows you they're really committed to this.
Yeah, that's a lot of buy-in from all these different sectors. What do you think is the driving force behind all this?
Well, I think it's important to look at the bigger picture here, right?
Right.
Each of those ministries, they have their own specific interests.
Right.
The Cyberspace Administration, they're likely looking at this from a security standpoint, control over critical technology infrastructure.
Makes sense.
The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, they're focused on boosting domestic technological capabilities,
Yeah.
not being reliant on other countries for essential tech.
Hmm.
The Ministry of Science and Technology, they see the potential for research breakthroughs.
Right. Right.
And then the Intellectual Property Administration is thinking about fostering innovation and setting those domestic standards.
So it's almost like this multi-pronged strategic approach.
Exactly. And the Asia Times piece suggests this could be a huge leap forward for RISC-V adoption, but maybe even more importantly, a countermeasure against those U.S. semiconductor export controls.
It's like if they can't get access to certain proprietary technologies, they're just going to develop and promote their own open alternative.
Exactly. It's a strategic move towards self-reliance.
And speaking of self-reliance, the article also talks about Hong Kong's ambitions to be a big hub for what's called integrated circuit design.
Right, or IC design.
IC design, yeah. And they're specifically looking at leveraging RISC-V for this.
Yeah, and it seems like the establishment of this Hong Kong AI Research and Development Institute is a big part of their plan. It's interesting to see Hong Kong trying to carve out this niche for themselves in this whole rapidly changing landscape.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's smart to find that area where you can be competitive and contribute to the overall ecosystem, right?
Absolutely. But beyond all the geopolitical stuff, let's talk about why RISC-V is generating so much excitement just from a tech perspective.
Yeah. Let's get into the nuts and bolts.
The Asia Times article mentions this quote from Frankwell Lin. He's the CEO of Andes Technology, a company in Taiwan.
Okay.
And this was in E-Times.
Got it.
And he was basically saying that RISC-V is going to be crucial for shaping the future, especially with AI becoming so important.
So what stuck out to you about that?
Well, Lin talks about this open and highly programmable architecture of RISC-V.
Okay.
And I think that's where a lot of the excitement comes from. It's so flexible.
So how does that give it an advantage, particularly in the field of AI, which is changing so rapidly?
So with AI, you have these things called AI accelerators.
Okay.
Think of them as specialized hardware designed for specific AI tasks.
Right.
Traditionally, they've been pretty rigid in what they can do.
Yeah.
But with RISC-V, it's different.
Okay.
Because it's so programmable, engineers can actually create highly customized processors that are optimized for different types of AI workloads, especially those that involve a lot of inference.
Inference meaning.
That's the process where an AI model takes in new data and then makes predictions or classifications.
Got it.
And since RISC-V isn't tied to some preset design, it can be much more efficient for these really demanding tasks.
So it's kind of like tailoring the hardware specifically to what the AI software needs.
Exactly. It's like having a custom-made suit instead of trying to fit into a one-size-fits-all.
So instead of like a general purpose chip, you could design one specifically for, say, processing natural language or image recognition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can really fine-tune it to the specific task. And the cool thing is, Lin points out that RISC-V's potential goes way beyond just AI.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're seeing it pop up in electric vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
Internet of Things, all those connected devices we have.
Right, right.
And even the rollout of 5G networks. Its open nature is driving innovation in all these areas,
Wow.
leading to new breakthroughs, even disrupting traditional business models. It's a big deal for economic growth in general.
It sounds like RISC-V is poised to be a real game changer across the tech world.
Absolutely.
Now, the Asia Times article also talks about some specific developments happening in China, which are pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, lots of exciting things happening over there.
Let's talk about this Shangshan RISC-V processor.
Right, from the Chinese Academy of Sciences.
Yeah, I heard it's supposed to come out sometime this year.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
And it's going to support DeepSeek, which is that big AI model.
Huh?
What makes Shangshan so special?
Well, there's this claim that it's the world's top-performing open-source processor core.
Ooh.
It's a bold statement for sure. But it shows you how ambitious they are and how quickly things are moving in China's RISC-V ecosystem.
They're not just adopting RISC-V, they're trying to be leaders in its development.
Exactly.
And this Yangshan project has actually been in the works for a while now, right?
Yeah, they launched it back in 2019.
With the Beijing Institute of Open Source Chip.
Right. Their goal was to create this high-performance RISC-V processor with continuous updates to improve the design, performance, and power efficiency.
So they're constantly refining it.
Exactly. It's not a one-and-done kind of project. It's about long-term commitment.
And then there's Alibaba.
Oh, yeah, they just made a huge announcement.
They're actually shipping their new server-grade RISC-V processor to their customers.
That's a big deal.
Huh.
You have a tech giant like Alibaba, and they're going all in on RISC-V for critical infrastructure.
Alibaba is already investing heavily in AI and cloud computing too, right?
Absolutely, like tens of billions of dollars over the next few years. And they're claiming their new AI model actually beats DeepSeek.
Wow.
So there's this really interesting synergy happening in China between developing this advanced hardware based on RISC-V and pushing the boundaries of AI.
That's fascinating. But it's also important to remember where the whole RISC-V concept came from.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that part.
It actually originated at UC Berkeley back in 2010.
So its roots are in the U.S.
Right. Then the RISC-V Foundation was established in 2015.
And the Asia Times article points out that the Institute of Computing Technologies of the Chinese Academy of Sciences was a founding member.
So they were involved from the very beginning.
Yeah, China recognized the potential of open source hardware early on.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2018, they formed the China RISC-V Alliance,
With a pretty ambitious goal.
a complete open source computing ecosystem within China by 2030.
That's a huge undertaking.
It's a clear sign that they're in it for the long haul. And it wasn't just about planning either.
What else did they do?
Around the same time, Shanghai started offering financial incentives to encourage RISC-V development.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. And then there's Star5, a Chinese company that specializes in RISC-V.
Okay.
They got support from Sci5, which, funnily enough, is based in Santa Clara, California.
Oh, interesting. So you see this blend of domestic initiatives with some international collaboration.
Yeah, in those early days, there was definitely more of a cooperative spirit. But then, as things with the U.S. and China started getting a little tense,
Right.
the RISC-V Foundation made a strategic move in 2020.
What was that?
They incorporated in Switzerland as the RISC-V International Association.
Okay.
It was a way to avoid any potential disruptions from the U.S.-China trade war.
So they basically position themselves outside of the direct line of fire.
Exactly. Smart move, I think.
The Asia Times article mentions that some U.S. policymakers have been talking about putting export controls on RISC-V tech going to China.
Yeah, there's been some talk about that.
But the article seems to think it might be too late.
I think it would be really difficult at this point.
Why is that?
Well, for one thing, China already accounts for about 50% of global RISC-V core shipments.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge chunk of the market. So any attempt to restrict its use would be a major challenge.
Yeah, you can't really put that genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. And the article lists some of the premier members of RISC-V International, and there are some big Chinese names on there.
Like who?
Alibaba Cloud, Huawei, ZTE, Tencent, and Beijing Eastwin. These are major players in the tech world.
That's a pretty powerful lineup.
It shows you how strong the domestic ecosystem around RISC-V is in China. But it's also interesting to see who else is on that list of premier members.
Oh, yeah. Who?
Companies like Andes Technology, Google, Intel, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, Synopsys, even Sci-Fi.
Wow, so even companies that have their own proprietary designs are getting involved.
Yeah, I think they're recognizing that RISC-V is something they can't ignore. It's got too much potential.
And the article talks about Beijing Eastwin as well, right?
Yeah, they might not be as well known, but they've actually got a pretty big global presence.
Really?
R&D centers, manufacturing plants, sales offices all over the place. They're a serious player in the Chinese RISC-V ecosystem.
So this isn't just a China-centric story.
No, not at all. It's a global movement.
And the RISC-V International Association is huge.
Hundreds of members from all over the world. Companies, organizations, research institutions, Europe, Asia, the Americas.
It's a real testament to the power of open standards.
It really is. And last year, they had the 4th annual RISC-V Summit China in Hangzhou.
How was that?
Massive. Thousands of attendees, both in person and online.
Wow.
And the numbers put it right up there with the big RISC-V events they hold in Europe and North America.
So China is a major force in the RISC-V world.
Without a doubt. And the Asia Times article also referenced an analysis from the Jamestown Foundation.
Okay.
This was back in December 2023. They were basically saying that China's embrace of RISC-V is a really strategic move.
In what sense?
They see it as a way to reshape the global semiconductor industry.
Wow.
And I think they're right.
What were some of the key takeaways from their analysis?
Well, they talked about how China views RISC-V as this opportunity for homegrown innovation.
Right, becoming more self-sufficient in a crucial technology sector.
Exactly. And also navigating the geopolitical tensions we were talking about earlier.
Avoiding those potential roadblocks.
Exactly. They're not just playing catch-up. They're trying to create a new path forward.
And the Jamestown Foundation also sees this growing influence of Chinese companies within RISC-V International as potentially shifting control away from the U.S.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if they can guide the development of RISC-V in a certain direction, it could have a big impact on the global tech order.
So to wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty clear that China is all in on RISC-V.
Yeah, they're making a serious commitment.
And the technical advantages, especially the open architecture and programmability, make it really versatile.
From AI to EVs, it has the potential to revolutionize a lot of industries.
And with China already being such a big part of the global RISC-V market and with all the innovation happening there, it's hard to ignore the possibility of a major shift in the semiconductor landscape.
It's definitely something to keep a close eye on. This is much bigger than just one country's tech advancements.
It's about the global tech industry as a whole and the balance of power in the world.
Exactly.
Which brings us to our final thought for our listeners today. Think about this. With RISC-V being open source and China pouring so much into it, what will the long-term impact be on innovation and competition in the global tech world?
That's a big question.
Will the U.S. be able to stay on top of the chip game? Or will RISC-V level the playing field in ways we haven't even thought of yet? It really makes you consider the relationship between open collaboration and national interests when it comes to these foundational technologies.
It's a fascinating and complex situation.
It really is.